Good afternoon, or perhaps it's morning where you are. I'm Dr. Tedra Anderson Brown, and it is my honor to welcome you all on behalf of Mrs. Vanessa Falls, the Southern Area Director of the Links Incorporated, and Dr. Persharon Dixon, the Southern Area Program Coordinator. We welcome you all to this mental health forum on intentional wellness, a focus on Black women and mental health. This, as you know, is a very necessary and candid conversation about the state of Black women's mental health. As you know, mental health awareness is recognized every year during the month of May, and mental health challenges are fairly common and unfortunately on the rise, with at least 1 in every 5 adult persons having a mental health diagnosis every year, and 1 in 6 of our young people. Mental health is another health disparity for Black and Brown communities, with African Americans being about 20% more likely to experience very serious mental health challenges, but particularly compared to our white counterparts. And we are much less likely to receive appropriate treatment to improve mental wellness. With that in mind, this Mental Health Lunch and Learn is an intentional opportunity of the Southern area of the Links Incorporated to educate us all on the state of Black women's mental health, to really normalize these conversations about our mental well-being, and to embrace and prioritize our healing through the sharing of resources and information. And it is now my pleasure to introduce to you our panelists for today. These sisters are amazing, and I call them the dynamic duo. We'd like to welcome to the virtual stage Miss Anita Daniels, or Miss D, as she likes to be called, as well as Dr. Kamala Azel. These ladies are both licensed mental health clinicians, and they bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. I'm going to briefly introduce them because we want to spend most of our time talking with them, but know that they are experts in behavioral change, and Miss D provides a safe space for people who are ready for a profound shift to complete the inner work they need to accomplish the outer change they want to see both in themselves and their world. She is a licensed clinical social worker, licensed clinical addiction specialist, and offers counseling in behavioral health, employee assistance, mediation, and addictions. She's also a founding member and immediate past president of the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports, where she provides sports counseling and consulting services to current and former collegiate and professional athletes. Welcome, Ms. D. We also have Dr. Kamala Azel, who is a licensed clinical mental health counselor supervisor, psychotherapist, and consultant at Soleil Counseling and Consultant, which she founded in 2009. She frequently provides professional commentary to media outlets, Essence Magazine, WTVD, and WRAL in North Carolina, and she has appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Network as a guest therapist on the television show Unfaithful Stories of Betrayal. Both are members of the Durham, North Carolina chapter of the Links Incorporated, and we welcome you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
So let's get started. I know sometimes this can be a hot and heavy topic, but we want to just make sure that we keep it real with our audience. And I thought we would start with you, Ms. D. Can you say a word or two about your thoughts about the current state of Black women's mental health?
Well, I will say that in this time in our life, and particularly since COVID, there has been a lot more stress on the family, and particularly the person who generally runs the family, which is the mother. I keep this with me often. This is a brain, and the brain really is a terrible thing to waste. The brain is an organ that tells the rest of the body what to do. And so it is so critical that we take care of our mental wealth. So that's something that I wanted to start with.
Awesome. So a nugget already for those of you who've joined us. The brain is a terrible thing to waste. And I actually have a button, you probably can't see it, but it says love your mind. And so we don't want to waste our mind. We want to love our mind. So Dr. Kamala, can you share a word or two about your thoughts about the current state of Black women's mental health?
Well, definitely. Along the same lines as Miss D, there are so many pressures that are placed upon women and African American or Black women. They're outside of all of the second shift things at home that women are responsible for. There are also things that are happening during the day at work, like income disparities, inequities, and harassment, racial, gender discrimination, and then we have maternal health disparities. So there's a lot that's happening there in to women in childbearing ages and during childbirth that are stressful and always on top of mind for African American women. And then I think exposure to trauma, we're seeing a lot of that, images of trauma that are affecting Black and Brown people. And so just internalizing all of that, those responsibilities and those demands that are placed upon women and specifically African American women can lead to a lot of mental distress. And so, like Ms. D said, your mental health is your wealth. So taking care of your mental health is important.
Awesome. So mental health is your wealth. You all have already given us a lot to unpack, and I can tell that we are going to have way more questions and things to talk about than we have time. So maybe a part two is coming. But let's keep it real. You mentioned something, Dr. Kamala, that I do want to go back to, this kind of Black woman, superwoman phenomenon, if you will, that we carry a heavy load. We caregive, we manage our households, our jobs. We're constantly battered with, trauma and all sorts of aggressions, micro and macro. And so one of the things that I hear all the time is Black women say, well, I don't have time to take care of me. And so what do we need to do to change that narrative to help us understand we have to make the time to take care of our mental wellness?
Well, first, these are societal pressures that are put on us. So, not pressures that we need to put on ourselves. There's societal expectations and pressures. And so, we should feel free to not put all of those pressures on ourselves and to not feel that we have to carry the bulk of the burden for everyone else. But it's important to just give ourselves grace and know that we're carrying a lot. We're dealing with a lot, and we can't expect to do it all. We can't force ourselves to try to do it all, and giving ourselves permission to delegate, to give some of the responsibilities to someone else. A lot of different strategies that we can use once, with self-care, but just giving ourselves permissions to take care of ourselves, because if we're not able to take care of ourselves, then we can't take care of anyone else. We will be mentally exhausted and spent and not have anything else if for anyone else, if we are not first pouring into ourselves and our own health.
I love that. So pour into yourself before you can pour into others. It kind of reminds me, and you've heard that saying, put your own mask on first before you go to help somebody else. So Ms. D, do you have anything to add to say to the ladies, and we sometimes hear, look, you can make time for wellness or you can make time for sickness. What would you add to that?
Well, what I will add is something that's important to me. I have two resources here that I will put in the chat, but one of them is boundaries. When to say yes and when to say no. And it is so difficult for us to say no. I don't really understand why. So I encourage my clients to say, no, thank you. And most people are so surprised by thank you that they aren't offended. So it really is critical to just say, no, thank you, because we can't do everything. There are only 24 hours in a day. And when the clock strikes midnight, it's today. And we have to give ourselves a break.
I love that. I love that. Say no, thank you. One of the things I say is no is an answer and a complete sentence.
Mhm.
And you touched on, and I know in one of your roles as the head of congregational care at your church, I know that there's always this idea about the servant, mentality, which we want to serve, and all of us are active in our communities. But what do you say when people keep asking, kind of along those lines, if you could just dig a little deeper for me when, and when we're in those roles, like
I'm
a
glad
tip.
you asked because I wanted to bring that part into the conversation. Wasn't quite sure how I was going to make my way into it. But what I remind people is Jesus said, simply say yes or simply say no. Now, I think he said simply because when we say yes, we don't give an explanation. But when we say no, we feel an obligation to
Mhm.
explain why the answer is no.
Mm.
And Jesus has said, you don't have to give an explanation. The answer is no. And if you want to be nice, say thank you. No, thank
Got
you.
it. I got it. I love that. I love that. And so when we say no to others, it's really like we're saying yes to ourselves, and that's a part of our
Yes.
self-care. So Dr. Kamala, we had you mentioned before about self-care. And, sometimes we hear things and we think, oh, that's just a buzzword, but can you explain a little bit why self-care is so important? And then we'll pivot a little bit to talk about different types of self-care.
Absolutely. So self care is exactly what it sounds like, taking care of yourself. We take care of everything else. We get tune ups and checkups, regular checkups on our cars. We get our regular medical checkups. We go and we do our physicals once a year, and we do our dentist. We check our teeth and get them clean, and we get our HVAC units checked. We do all of these checkups because we want things to continue to run properly or to operate properly without any problems. So we have to do the same things for our minds and our mental health. We
Mhm.
have to take care of them. We have to do regular tune-ups or checkups. And so there are certain things that we need to do to make sure that we can go through day by day with as least amount of problems and stress as possible. And so just doing, simple things. Would you like to talk about self-care strategies now, or should we?
Yeah, let me ask Miss D if she can maybe start us out, and then I'll come back to you,
Okay.
Dr. Kamala.
Sounds
What are
good.
some
Sounds
of
good.
those self-care strategies that we should be thinking about? And certainly, no one size fits all, right? We're all
That's
different. So
true.
what are some things you would recommend?
Well, I want to first recommend things that people enjoy because so many times people stop doing things they enjoy, and it really lifts your spirits when you do something that you enjoy. So I encourage people to journal. That gives you an opportunity to get things off your chest. I encourage people to spend time with people whose company they enjoy. Now, that's important because you don't enjoy everyone's company. So that's definitely important. Prayer is another thing, and meditation. Those are other opportunities to take care of oneself. And then exercise, even walking 10 minutes a day or walking through your house. Sometimes I go upstairs, come back downstairs, walk through, go back up, come back down. Before I know it, I've done 10 minutes and I'm getting approval from my watch telling me, yeah, you made it today.
Well, so we're laughing and we all showed our watches, but like-mindedness is so important, right? As far as accountability for your self-care, right? So you can do it alone, do things you enjoy, it sounds like, but also you said, be with people whose company you enjoy. And so, Dr. Kamala, one of the things that we know is that we hear a lot about connections, right? Can you speak to that and the importance in terms of our self-care and our mental wellness about connections? And, people will talk about their tribe, their sister circle, their girls. Tell us a little bit about why that's important.
Yes, it's important to have, as humans, we have a natural yearning to be connected to others. And it doesn't matter how many people it is, but we need to be connected to someone. You need someone who you can count on or call on or talk to when there are things that are going on with you, to celebrate with, just for support. There are a lot of things that are going on, as we've talked about. However, there's often when you're stressed and you're not feeling well, it makes you sometimes want to sink inside yourself and to isolate from others. But it's important to maintain those connections, like Dr. D said, with the people who you enjoy being around. Maintain those connections so those people can help lift you up. And then in their times of need, you can also lift them up.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And one of the things that we want our audience to know is, if you look on the bottom of the screen, we actually want to take just a quick pause and remind you that if you or someone that you love is experiencing a mental health crisis, please take a moment to call or text 988, which is the National Suicide Prevention and Crisis Lifeline, where you can talk to someone 24 hours a day. You can also text home or talk to 741-741, because our mental wellness matters. We want you to know that there are resources and people who are out there for you. So, ladies, we're going to take a quick pause. And one of the things that we wanted to do, we wanted to pivot here just a bit. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Ms. Shawn Hunter Green, who is the president of the Buckhead Cascade City, Georgia chapter of the Links Incorporated. And she's going to take a few moments to share with all of us some of the exciting work that their chapter is doing here in the Southern area to really combat stigma and also provide solutions for some of the mental health challenges facing our communities, particularly in our young people. Ms. Hunter Green?
Thank you for the opportunity to join this esteemed panel. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I have been writing diligently all of the self-care strategies that you guys have offered and provided today. But I'm here to represent my chapter, which is the Buckhead Cascade City, Georgia chapter, and specifically our Healthy Mind, Healthy Life umbrella program. Of course, this program was in development and in partnership with our entire chapter primarily. I want to highlight our program chair, Kenya Johnson. I want to also highlight our mental health ambassador, which is Margaret Collier, all of our facet chairs, and all 85 members of the Buckhead Cascade City, Georgia chapter. It takes a team to make something like this work. Next slide. So when we started thinking about an umbrella program and we started thinking about something that could be impactful for our chapter, we started with research. And one of the things that was highlighted and really alarming was what the US Surgeon General stated, which is that mental health is the defining public health crisis of our time, and especially among ages 15 to 24. They're experiencing depression, isolation, and suicidal ideation at a rising rate. That quickly became our why. When you start to look at some of the statistics and you really start to peel back the onion and you think about suicides are the leading cause of death among people aged 15 to 24. When you start to look at Black college students and what they are experiencing as they are navigating undergraduate life, separation anxiety, student poverty, tuition anxiety, academic stress, and so many other mental health conditions. And then the piece that is key is that of these students that are experiencing these crises, only half of them are actually seeking any type of treatment, and primarily because of the stigma. And we know within the Black community especially, there is a stigma around mental health. And then the last stat, which was so impactful for us as a chapter, was we, as African American women, we are suffering as well, and we also don't get the help that we need. So that quickly became our target for our program: high school students, Black college students, and Black women. But if you're going to help the community, you have to make sure that you are armed with information. And so it was really important for us to partner with an organization that could really provide us with the education and training. So we quickly partnered with NAMI. And if you don't know about NAMI, NAMI is an amazing resource. It is the National Alliance of Mental Health, and they have a wealth of resources that can help all of us, those that are helping the community, as well as those that need help. And so it was important that our members were educated and trained. And I'm excited to say that 100% of our members actually completed the In the Silence training. That is something that we realized was really, really important, not only for us to understand, but also as we are working with the community to help the community to understand, creating a safe space for these conversations and a safe space for us to be able to navigate this as a community. Next slide. So, our community program, externally focused, is Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. And we know that everything starts with the mind. It starts with our thoughts. And it's not a surprise that the head is at the top of the body. The mind is at the top of the body because it truly does drive everything else that happens within our life. And so healthy life is the payoff if you have a healthy mind. So with our one program, 5 facets, we have 3 locations where we have started this program and looking forward to expanding in the years to come. But Phoenix Academy focuses on high school students, and it's high school students that have faced some type of academic, socioeconomic, socio-emotional, or behavioral challenge in their current high school that may become an impediment to them earning their high school diploma. And so this program gives the students skills, it gives them resources, it prepares them for college, it prepares them for postgraduate, and ultimately it just really gives them the support that they need. And so we're excited to partner with them. And some of the programs that we were able to launch were Minds on the Menu, because we know nutrition is important to mental health. Teens and mental health, making sure that they're aware of the statistics that are impacting them. Music on my mind. So, understanding those therapeutic things that can be helpful as you're thinking about your mental health. And we did that in partnership with Avery Dixon. And when I feel sad or stressed, what do you do? And giving students the resources and tools to be able to navigate. And most recently, we started a vegetable garden because we know that gardening can also be therapeutic. We also were excited to partner with Clark Atlanta University. You saw that stat on the first slide that highlighted the population where mental health is really starting to trend, and it's with our Black college students. And so we were able to partner around the You Good Mental Health Summit. And this question of you good is one that we can ask each other. It's one that we can ask in our community and our families, and really waiting and creating an open space to hear the answer to that question, and letting our loved ones know, and our family and friends, that it's okay not to be okay. We showed the secret she kept. We showed the secret she kept with the author Rashonda Tate. We also had a panel discussion with Dr. Nicole LaBeach, where there was really an open dialogue with the students around relationships. We hosted a workshop, The Resilient You. And then as I move on to our other program, as I need to speed this up a bit, we also focused with Lowry Institute in that partnership, where they are looking at closing the gap around food insecurity, which we know is also impactful to mental health. So through our Women of the Diaspora fundraiser, we were able to raise $30,000 to focus on that program, as well as to sponsor NAMI in the Silence workshops for the international students that are part of the Institute as well. Next slide. And so just as I start to wrap this up, and we heard one of the panelists mention that we have to put on our oxygen mask too. So it was important for us to also have a focus on our sisters that are part of our chapter. So one of the programs that we had was Wisdom Wednesday Linkspirations, where we share Linkspiration type messages, we share songs, we share resources. We also had monthly purposeful pauses where you can see the titles there. We talk about caregiving and other things that impact our mental health as part of our Skyline News. We also recently had a co-partnered program with our HHS facet in our social committee around Black cake and talking about generational trauma. So we are taking the opportunity to put our oxygen mask on within our chapter. Next slide. And just as we wrap this all up, I wanted to just highlight some of our program in action, but I really wanted to highlight one of the questions that's on the slide because I think it really does speak to our why and why we're having this conversation and why this body of work is so important. And one of the questions is, how can we support Black men that don't speak up? What we're doing by having these conversations, by doing this program, is we are creating an open space and an open dialogue for questions, creating an open dialogue to say, yes, I am suffering, and an open dialogue to say, you are not suffering alone, and we are here to help you. Thank you for the opportunity to present on behalf of my chapter, and thank you so much to the Southern area for this great work that you are doing. Back to Ms. Brown.
Thank you so much. And great work and impact in terms of the healthy mind, healthy life. And we're looking forward to seeing even more. And as we transition back to our panelists, I think you've given us fodder for like moving forward. As you heard Ms. D and Dr. Kamala, one of the concerns that that the Buckhead Cascade City chapter outlined was really about suicide. And we're seeing an unfortunate increase in suicide, in people of color, which, when I trained back in the day, that was supposed to be protective, right? But now we're seeing in children as young as 5 and 8 and 12, as well as, our older, our seasoned population who are attempting and dying by suicide. So I guess the first question is, we're doing, well, not a question, but we're doing our part because we want to raise awareness. We want to talk about it, right? Can suicide be prevented? That would be the question. And how do we help people understand what the resources there are to help them with suicide? And we'll start with you, Ms. D.
It can be prevented if we think about it in a lot of different ways. Some of the ways that people might commit suicide that we would not think about is the amount of drugs or alcohol that they use, or driving recklessly, no seatbelt, speeding. Any of those kinds of things are other ways that really I'm doing something to harm myself that can ultimately end in my demise. And I just believe it's important for us to help people understand it is acceptable. If we go to the doctor because we have chest pains, we can go to the doctor because it feels like our brain is hurting, So something doesn't feel right. It's okay to go talk to someone and say, I think I need some help. It seems like things are a little bit abnormal. But people find ways to harm themselves that may not appear to be suicide on the surface or an attempt, but it actually is. And when we see that, we need to speak up and offer to help, offer to go with someone to see a doctor. Don't just say, oh, it'll be okay. You'll be okay. I think we say that too much instead of saying, what can I do to make sure you are okay?
Oh, I love that. So not it'll be okay, to trivialize it, but what can I do to be sure that you're okay? So I recognize there's something that's not quite right, and it's okay for you not to be okay, but how can I help? I love that. I love that. That's another nugget to our participants. Dr. Kamala, would you like to add to that?
Just a little bit. So when people are participating in those harmful behaviors, often they are doing those to feel good. They're trying to get something out of it, some kind of enjoyment. So the alcohol, the drugs, the reckless driving. And we just a moment ago talked about self care. So instead of doing harmful behaviors that could lead to death or serious injury, we want to take care of ourselves. So feel good by incorporating healthy behaviors that will only do things that will make us better. So essentially, when there is a cry for help or when we don't feel good, we have to do things to take care of ourselves. So whether that is incorporating those healthy self-care activities or going to the doctor or reaching out to our support system, being a support system for others, because sometimes when we're hurting, again, we don't know how, we don't feel like it, we don't have the motivation to reach out to someone else. Just being support systems, taking care of each other. We're all here together, we're all in society trying to function and live and do our thing. We need to try to take care of each other, so that we can uh, decrease the instances of suicide and attempts for suicide.
That's great advice. And one of the things that I often will hear is folks say, well, if I ask somebody, I'm going to make them have those thoughts. And we need to also understand that, much like I love the medical analogy. If you ask somebody, are you having chest pain or are you choking? Right? That's the expectation. So we need to begin to ask, are you okay? Or I'm concerned about you. Are you okay? How can I help? Just love that. And so we know, as professionals, that help is available, right? But how can we explain to our audience what that help is, right? What type of help and how those conditions can be treated? Dr. Kamala, can you start with that?
Yes, I can. So there are a lot of different professions under the mental health umbrella. So you have licensed clinical social workers, you have licensed clinical mental health counselors, licensed marriage and family therapists, so psychologists, psychiatrists. You have a number of us under the umbrella of mental health. Some key things to look for when you are looking for someone to help is a person who is licensed, who has a board, who's making sure that we're doing the right thing. So if we don't do the right thing, you have someone to report to.
Mhm.
Uh, the first ones that I listed, so social workers, counselors, marriage and family therapists, psychologists, we are generally focused on talk therapy. Psychiatrists are medication management as well as talk therapy. So there are a number of different professionals that you can reach out to if you are looking for some assistance with mental health care. If you don't have immediate access to one of those professionals, and if you do have a primary care physician, you can ask your primary care physician to direct you in that direction. Or if you are a woman and you are seeing a GYN or an OBGYN, you can also ask that clinician for a referral to a mental health professional.
Love that. Love that. And Misty, one of the things that we hear often, as Black women in this profession is, I want to see somebody who looks like me. Which we know is not, it's not always possible, right? I was reading and I saw where less than 2% of the psychologists are African American women. So Dr. Kamala, you're in the 2%. And less than about 15% of the social work therapists. So you're in the, we're a hot commodity, in some ways. How do we help our community feel comfortable in terms of and finding what we would call culturally competent therapists or clinicians?
One of the ways, at least the people at my church, and I know my pastor, we have a congregational care and counseling ministry. I don't necessarily believe every church has one, but it's not a bad idea to consider at least having people in the congregation for those members who might need it to at least get the conversation started. And then if they need to transition to someone else, they can certainly do that. The other thing that I think about when I think about mental wealth is looking at who do I know that may be able to tell me the names of, I referred someone to a clinician of color and licensed marriage and family therapist just this morning. So we know each other, we communicate with each other, we look for each other so we can refer to each other. The one license that I wanted to add is the licensed clinical addiction specialist, because I am very concerned about gambling. There are a lot of people, addiction is more than just alcohol, marijuana, all those things.
Mhm.
It's gambling, it's eating, it's shopping, it's videos on the internet. I can't get into bed because I'm playing video games, or so there are so many other addictions that I want to make sure that people are aware there are licensed clinical addiction specialists to help address some of those issues as well.
That's wonderful. And I thought as you were talking, it reminded me when we want a good meal, right? We ask our friends what's a good restaurant. We want to read a good book. We ask our friends, or we look it up, or so very similar. If we're looking for a dentist or whatever, we ask. So I think that is a part of this, that we have to get to the space where we're comfortable in asking, so that we can get the help that we need and know that there's no shame in getting that help. So we have shared a lot, and we want to be intentional about our time today, because we know that many are on their lunch break. So we're going to wrap it up. As we close, maybe you can share like one final remark with the audience, just in general about mental health and wellness, and then tell our audience one of your go-to resources. And I'm going to start with you, Ms. D.
So one of the things that I want people to be aware of is some of the mild symptoms that may indicate that you're having a mental wealth challenge. If you're feeling down or you're able to do your job, sometimes we can work, but are we functioning at the level that we used to perform at? Are we functioning? Having trouble sleeping, staying awake when you should be asleep, loss of appetite, or possibly eating too much. So, and if that's been going on for about 2 to 3 weeks, then you may want to consider checking in with someone to make sure that you're okay. I have 2 resources, and I actually put them in the comments. And the only reason I want to mention both is because one is boundaries, when to say yes, when to say no, to take control of your life. The other, which I think is really, really critical, is the Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health. I learned so much from reading this book, just thinking about what we experience in the workplace. And a lot of us don't think about it because we've almost become too accustomed to it. But recognizing that we are still being mistreated and bullied in the workplace, and knowing that is important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Kamala?
And I'll just like to just say some words to leave you with. Give yourself grace, set your boundaries, and go ahead and get you a therapist. So whether or not anything is happening right now, go ahead, find yourself a therapist, because if something happens, if you want a therapist or you want an appointment, you want to be able to get in when you can get in and not have to wait, on a waiting list, or not have to be frantic trying to find someone. So just like we all have our PCP, our primary care physician, if we go anywhere, we can just list that person's name and telephone number. It's good to do that now for a therapist and just go in once or twice a year for a checkup and make sure everything is going okay and get you some good tips and strategies so that you can continue being okay.
It's awesome. Thank you all so much. I mean, the dynamic duo has just been dynamic today. As we close, we just thank you so much for sharing, your time and your expertise. And I'm sure we'll call on you again. And for those of us who joined us again, we want to remind you that if you are a loved one experiencing a crisis, please call or text 988, that National Suicide Prevention and Crisis Line, or text TALK to 741-741, and a skilled professional counselor will answer that line and talk with you or text with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I got so many great nuggets today, but I do want to share a few resources, and we will drop those in the comment section. One of them, and you've heard several, NAMI and books, but one of them, therapyforblackgirls.com, and Melanin and Mental Health, specifically for women of color, and then BeTheOne2.com, which is a resource that helps us to feel more comfortable talking about suicide prevention so that we can help those who may be in distress. And we want to, again, thank our panelists. And again, on behalf of Mrs. Vanessa Falls, the Southern Area Director of the Links Incorporated, we thank you so much for joining us, ladies. And if there are gentlemen on, we are on this journey together. Here's to your health and mental wellness, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This video will be on the Southern Area of the Links Incorporated website, so please go back and check it out. Send your family and friends so that they can get the nuggets and the information so that we can meet the needs of ourselves and our communities. Thank you so much, and you have a great one. Bye-bye.